Okay, let's now see how we can fetch all the user from our user tables, and we will display in our index. So let's come to our controller of user controller. Here is the index method, and index we are returning a view user dot index. So we will return some data with and okay, create a data array. Here we say users, and this will be equal to $sign this, dollar this, and we have also we have instantiated it in our constructor. So users, and we will send with where user, and we need to create this where user in our user model. So control P user.php, and here we are user model. Okay, let's create a public function where user. So in a where user, where we will fetch all the data from database, and we will send to our index. Okay, first we need the parent ID. So parent ID will be the currently authenticated user, and its ID. It's a parent underscore ID, and in where user we will set ID to equal to null. Okay, we'll set our ID to null, and the parent ID is auth user parent ID. So we condition if auth user parent ID is equal to 0. So we are setting our, if this is the case, if when we there is no parent ID, if it is a super admin, so then we'll condition it to, then the parent ID will be auth user ID will become the parent ID. Okay, and we need to quickly include this auth facade into our namespace. So auth is included, db is included also. Okay, so let's create a variable table, and table db facade, and the table is users as we are creating alias u, and then we will say table where u dot parent ID this parent ID. Parent ID, this one, the parent ID. If it is author user parent ID, if it's null, then this becomes the parent ID, and we are getting all the data from user, where you in a user table parent ID is equal to this parent ID. Let's close it, and let's okay we'll do and two checks. If it is the case of if ID not equal to null, then this block of code, and if id equal to null, then this block of code, and after that we will return the table table get, and it will get fetch all the records. So we will give this id when we will in using we will display this index. So right now, okay, let's check it, this condition. If it is id not null, then the table variable uh, table, then it will match id, the id that we will pass through this parameter to this function where user id. If id is not null, if this is not null and we are passing the parameter to this function, then check this condition. If id is not null table where, then it will not check this where. First it will check, and after parent id is matched, then it will check the table where id is equal to this passing id. So close this, and if this is the case, if id is equal to null, then we say table select, and it will select u dot id from a user table, and u dot name, u is the alias that we have created in user as u. So u dot name, and comma separated, and another string u dot email, u dot phone, and u dot status, and also select r dot role. So we will left join our role table. So, and in it is the name, role name, or we change it in our database roles. This is the field name is name. Let's change it to role, save it. Because we are accessing these roles. Okay, let revert back. Name and name. Okay. So role r dot name, we can set an alias to role. So UID, U name, U email, and U phone, U status, R dot name as a role. Okay, and we have to now left join our role table to access this field R dot name as a role. We can set table table left join to roles as R. So we will left join our role u dot role with r dot id. And in a user table, see, we have a field of a role. So we are left joining this id to our role table. So in a role, we have these id. So we will match this id to a user, because when we create a user, we have sent the role id. Okay, left join roles, um, roles where u dot role, and we can give an equal sign is equal to r dot id in role tables. So in a user table, u dot role, uh, yes, u dot role is equal to r dot id in a role table. So it will make a left join to role tables. Okay, let's recap. We have a default id null, and we are getting the parent id, authenticated user. If it is null, then the authenticated user id will become parent id. Now db select user as u, alias u, where parent id is this. If id we are not passing parameter in this function, then if id is not equal to null, if we are passing the parameter of this function, then the role table where id in table user id will be this id that we are getting. And if id is equal to null, then table select uid, uname, u email, u phone, u status, and r dot name as role, and we are left joining this user table with our role table. So left join role as r, and in a table we are matching r dot id with u dot role here, which is a u dot role. This id will match to the roles table. Okay, let's in an index user control. Now we are sending this data user table, this user where user to our table data array users, and we will pass this data to our user index. And in user index, okay, we need to create a table to fetch the result. Let's create a row div. Under that div we required a div column small 8, and another class column offset 2, and inside this div we required another div, and this div we required a table class table, and table another class table hover, and in this table we required a table head plus um, table body. So in table body, a table head, we require a table row. Inside that table row, we require table heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we multiply 7, and in a table body, if we require a table row, inside table row, we require a table data, and we multiply by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 table ID, Okay, let's hit tab, and the layout will be created as. So this div, this div, table, table head, and table body. Name, email, phone, status, role, action, and action. Okay, let's remove this one. Let's check in our browser where it is. Refresh. So we are name, email, phone, status, and role. Let's here create a empty div. Save it. Okay. In a table data, we will fetch the our data from table. So in a table body and table raw, let me fetch our R. So, so if count user greater than user, if there are user for each user as a user, and we will end this after the table row, where this row, and okay. So save it. Right now, I'm not displaying the messages. We will display in next video. So stay tuned.